Hey there, good evening. Welcome back to my little gardening show. Wanted to bring you along tonight. I've got some free time here and got some seeds in the mail, so we've begun the process of planting next year's garden as far as the planting dates, seed starting dates, etc., etc. So I want to give a shout out to the MI Gardener. I am giving him a try this year. He's got fantastic deals on seeds. I mean, it's 99 cents a packet, which is phenomenal considering, Baker Creek, places like that, it's running, 250 to 350, depending, like this one was $3 because it's kind of a specialty deal, but, for $3, I got 3 packages of, standard seed there, so pretty good deal. I didn't get anything like, crazy exotic, just, kind of the standard stuff that I've grown before. Trying a few new things, like the orange Swiss chard. A bunching onion. So I just, I picked up a few things, spent maybe about $15 at his store, spent probably another 15 at Baker Creek, and then that was it. I think maybe picked up 2 or 3 packets from Seed Savers because they had some varieties that looked real good. And then I've got just a ton of seed down in the basement that I'll be pulling from for like my peppers, my cucumbers, some of the tomatoes, things like that. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. Just kind of picking stuff out, figuring it out. So, I got the seed, got an idea of what we want to grow. The next task is to put it on the calendar and figure out when we're going to start seeds, when we're going to plant. So I picked up Tractor Supply Store, had just kind of a quick tip there. The one in town, the day after Christmas, all their calendars and stuff are 50% off. So I got a pretty nice little Farmer's Almanac type calendar, whatever, for about $4, $5, and I picked up the almanac along with that because it had some additional information that I wanted to check out. So anyway, the first thing, with the calendar is figuring out your season, how long of a season you got. And where I live here in zone 6A, on the conservative side, I've got about 157 days to grow like warm weather stuff without any kind of like season extending protection, row covers, things like that. The frost-free date is like May 13th, I think, and the first frost date is October 17th is when it could potentially hit. So again, it's on the conservative side. 157 days on the conservative side, maybe 180 days, middle of the road. But if I want to play it safe, that's kind of what I'm looking at. That is important because, you notice on a lot of these seed packets, it will tell days to maturity and things of that nature. And so if you're in a cooler climate, you don't want to pick stuff that's going to take, 130 days to maturity, 160 days or whatever. You want to pick varieties that are going to mature really quick or relative to the other ones, and that are going to be better suited to your climate. So, and then like tomatoes and stuff like that, if you have trouble growing the big ones because you don't have enough time in the season, you want to grow the cherry tomatoes, the smaller ones that will set fruit faster, develop faster, and you'll still get a pretty good harvest. So that is important, knowing your season, knowing when it starts. Once you have those dates locked in, you can start planting. And so, generally speaking, most of these seeds, they take between 4 to 8 weeks to germinate, to grow, to get to the point where you can transplant them. if you're starting them from seed. General rule of thumb, you don't want them in the cell packs or the grow trays for more than 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. Anything past that, you're kind of pushing it. And I saw that last year. I used the Mittlighter grow trays, which were really nice and easy to get the seedlings out. But particularly with the tomatoes and some of the other things, they were in the trays too long, and they started developing some deficiencies. The tomatoes in particular were more or less a disaster. The trays weren't deep enough for the time frame that I had. They had way more top growth than what they should have had at that stage, and that kind of contributed to some of the losses I had when I finally did get them in the ground. So anyway, 4 to 6 weeks in the seed trays is kind of what you want to plan out. And so what I'm doing is kind of going through the Farmer's Almanac. They've got a nice little lunar calendar, planting by the moon phases. I don't have it marked here, but basically I'm in section 2 as far as regions according to that calendar. And what it does is it's got a list of all the vegetables, and it's got the seed starting dates and when would be a good time to set them out based on the phases of the moon. And the idea there is that certain times of the year with phases of the moon, when the moon is close to the earth or whatever, and I think it's tidal effects, it pulls moisture up into that area where the seeds are growing, and so it improves germination rates. And so there's a lot of old-time wisdom in planting by the lunar calendar to increase the chances that your seeds are going to sprout and things are going to be good. So kind of going along with that, let's use tomatoes and peppers for example. Tomatoes and peppers, first of all, May 13th, again, is my first chance, a conservative chance of getting them in the ground. Now, based on what happened to me last year, I'm not going to do that. We're going to plant them Memorial Day weekend, and the reason for that is because last year I planted them around Mother's Day weekend, which happened to be pretty early. I think the earliest it could possibly be, and the annual rotation or whatever. And we got a pretty bad frost, and I lost most of my tomatoes, and we had to redo the whole thing. It was a big mess. So knowing that, I'm going to be even more conservative than that. I'm going to set them out here, and that happens to match up with what the Farmer's Almanac said for above ground crops. And this calendar actually matches my zones. So these dates are pretty close to what the almanac would tell me when I was looking them up. So the 27th, this weekend, in May would be the best weekend to put my transplants out because of the phase of the moon. Now I'm writing a T next to those to indicate transplant, but what I want to do is go back 6 to 8 weeks from this to determine when I want to start seeds. So I kind of go back, and just knowing from experience that my peppers and eggplant take longer to germinate than my tomatoes, I'm going 8 weeks back for the peppers and eggplant. So the first weekend in April is when I'll start them in the trays, and then the 15th of April is when I'll look to start my tomatoes. That's just for example there. I mean, none of these dates are hard and fast. I can adjust this stuff, but the idea is that you're mapping out what you're doing. If you're growing a bunch of different stuff, you'll want to do this. You'll want to map, and you probably are already doing it, but you'll want to map it out so that you're not trying to do everything all at once, and so you don't forget something, or it just helps you to plan ahead. And so you got space in the grow room too. If I tried to start everything at once, I would not have enough space. If I start all my cold weather and all my warm weather stuff at the same time, I don't have enough space in that room to germinate all the seeds. So, around the end of February is when I'll start the cold weather stuff. 4 to 6 weeks. That'll put it about the beginning of April that I'll be setting that stuff out, or I'll be bringing it outside towards the beginning of April to harden off that last week before planting it, because a lot of that stuff can tolerate light frost and stuff like that. And then as the stuff's coming out of the grow room, the cold weather stuff, I'm starting the warm weather stuff behind it, and it works out pretty good. One of the other things you want to consider if you're starting seeds for the first time or you're trying to map things out is the temperature of your grow room. The warmer it is, the faster things are going to grow. Now mine's down in the basement in the garage, so it's cooler. It averages around 50 degrees, and even though I got a grow mat to stimulate the seeds to get them to grow, once they start growing, because it's cold in there, it takes them a little bit longer than they would if it was like 70 degrees. Again, you kind of see that with the cold weather and the warm weather stuff. Just seems like, especially the tomatoes, they shoot up really quick when the temperature starts getting up there in the 60s and even possibly 70s. So anyway, that's kind of the method of the madness. Figure out your growing season, figure out what you want to grow, make sure that what you want to grow matches the time frame, like the days to maturity, so that you actually reap a harvest. You get enough time to do that. And then start planning out your dates based on your first frost-free date or your frost dates. Kind of map your stuff around that. Figure out when you want it in the ground. If you're going to start seeds, go about 4 to 6 weeks back. Some of them 8 weeks. Some maybe even 12 weeks. Like celery takes a really long time. At least that's been my experience. But map this stuff out. Look at the Farmer's Almanac, other online tools. Take advantage of the lunar calendar, to maximize germination rates. And you should have a lot of success. Again, it's a process. There's a lot. It's simple, but it's not. There's a lot to it. And probably the biggest mistake you can make is trying to do it all on one weekend. It's better to kind of space it out, and that way you get something, it's sustainable. And same with the garden prep, like prepping the garden for planting and stuff like that. You don't have to till the whole thing all at once, or prep your beds all at once. Last year we did, I think, 3 50-foot beds a weekend. And we just prepped a little bit at a time as we needed to, and it worked out really well. We had a real successful year, and so hoping for more of the same. And so anyway, I guess that's it for now. Until next time, happy gardening.